Hey everyone, welcome to Lachlan Likes a Thing, the show where I take a thing and see whether or not I like it. Now the thing, or things that we're looking at in this video are the new VSonic VSD3 and VSD3S in-ear earphones. Now there's been a bit of excitement about these earphones, or at least I've been excited about these earphones, because these are $60 earphones, and VSonic during the development of these earphones have stated that they use the Westone 4R as the target reference for these earphones. Now, obviously the Westone 4R is a lot more expensive than $60, but this is a $60 earphone with a fully sealed design with detachable cables, and if any kind of company could pull off a really good earphone for 60 bucks, it would be VSonic. They are the makers of my favorite in-ear earphone, the VSonic GR07. So I got both of these models. I got the VSD3 and the 3S, and I'll go into the differences between the two later on in the video. I got both of them from Lend Me Your Ears in Singapore, and I want to give a big shout out to Martin Lundum and R. Cooper, who made it actually possible with their generous PayPal donations for me to just go ahead and order both of these models. So a big thank you. Anyway, I stated in my initial unboxing video with my first impressions of these earphones that I was really excited about these because they seem like a really good alternative to the Shure SE215, and the SE215 is a very, very popular earphone. It's a very easy to recommend earphone. But as I've listened to these over time and really kind of experienced using them, putting them up against this Shure SE215 really made me think about what makes the SE215 really popular, and accordingly how these things stack up against the SE215. So let's start with the design. So first of all, I should state that the only apparent physical difference that you can see between the VSD3 and the 3S is that the 3S has an S marker on the right earpiece. Other than that, they're more or less physically identical. They use this kind of black crystalline geometric shape, which I think looks really nice actually. It reminds me very strongly of Monster's Vector line of earphones and headphones, and I suspect that's where the inspiration comes from, but I still think it looks great. The thing about this design though is that in order for VSonic to make an efficient, fully sealed dynamic driver design, it looks like VSonic has had to make the earpieces a little larger than what you would normally find. So especially compared to the Shure SE215, the earpieces on the VSD3 are just a bit fatter, they're just a bit bigger. Personally, I found that after about 2 hours, sometimes you get a little bit of a sore spot inside your ears because the earpieces are a bit larger. So that's one area where the VSD3 loses out to the SE215. The other thing about this design is that even though it's still a negative profile fit, it's still not as flat against the ear as the Shure SE215, which has basically a gentle curve. So again, while you can quite comfortably wear the SE215 lying down, and that's what I generally do with the SE215, that's my travel IEM. I wear it in hotels so I can block out kind of the unfamiliar environment and go to sleep that way. I find this harder to do with the VSD3 because it will rub up against the inside of your ear. Now, as far as the cable goes, the VSD3 uses a detachable cable with a connector that looks like standard MMCX, but it's actually a little deeper than standard MMCX. So your off-the-shelf cables for earphones from Shure and Westone just won't work with the VSD3, which I find is a bit of an unusual choice because it does mean that VSonic has a bit of a monopoly on the detachable cables, at least for the moment. The other thing to note is that just like MMCX connectors, you should not detach these cables for just no reason at all, because each time you detach them, the cable will get a little more loose, the connector will start allowing kind of debris in. You might find sound cutting in and out if you do that. So my advice is just to leave the cables alone unless you have a really good reason to detach them. The actual cables themselves are of a reasonably high quality as far as the cable sheathing goes. The sheath is quite, tough feeling. It's quite supple, so that's nice. My one criticism of the cable is that it really lacks strain relief on vital points. So particularly around the Y split, there's no strain reliefs. On the straight angle plug, there is no strain relief, and in fact there's actually a quite hard plastic piece here, which is quite concerning. And I would have preferred a 90-degree angle plug on this earphone. So again, that's another area that the VSD3 kind of falls short compared to the SE215, which has really chunky, very durable seeming cables. Now, I've already touched on comfort, but I just wanted to move on to the specific point of the ear guides on the VSD3, and I'll tell you now, I hate these ear guides. They are terrible. The ear guides are these big, floppy, chunky rubber pieces that route the cable through this central kind of channel. But what you'll find is that constantly, when you're taking the earphones and putting them on, and you're taking them off, you'll find that the cable will just come out of the central channel, and every single time you have to go through this fiddly exercise of reseating the cable inside the strain relief. Once it's on the strain relief and you have them on your ears, the strain reliefs are very comfortable. They do block out a lot of cable noise, so I have no complaints there. But again, to go through that annoying kind of thing where you have to readjust the ear guide each time, I find that very frustrating personally. So let's talk about the sound, and I have to say my initial impressions of the VSD3 and the VSD3S were very positive, and that still remains true. These are both earphones that are going to be really a good choice for people who prefer more of a warm, more of a kind of rich sound, and that's kind of expected given that the Westone 4R was the target reference. The VSD3 and the 3S, they sound very, very similar, and they both have this kind of lush sound to them. They can sound slightly boomy at times, they can sound slightly congested, and the soundstage can feel a little compressed. But compared to the Shure SE215, I definitely think these sound cleaner in the bass and the mid bass. So that's one area where I think that they do excel compared to the SE215s. They're just like a better version of the same kind of warm sound. The differences between the 3 and the 3S are quite subtle, and I kind of summarize it as saying the 3S is the S should maybe stand for smooth. And what I mean by that is that the 3S is more of the mellow of the two. It's a little more balanced, the bass is a little more subdued. I find that the overall tone of it is just a bit more laid back. Whereas the 3 actually is more aggressive in the bass, and funnily enough, it's actually slightly more forward in the treble. I do find that kind of the lower treble, particularly around female vocals, just seems a bit more glossy and a bit more vibrant on the VSD3. And because of the forward treble, the 3 actually sounds like it has a slightly wider sound stage. Now, I prefer actually the 3S over the 3. I think the 3 sounds a little more artificial, the 3S sounds a little more natural, but that's very much a personal preference. I think these sound way more similar than they do sound different, so it's just a little bit of a kind of preference thing as far as which one you might choose. Shane, my friend, and I, when we compared them, he actually came up with the opposite conclusions based on what he heard. So again, that tells you that they're very, very similar sounding, and I wouldn't go ahead and buy both, for instance, unless you can find someone who might take the one that you don't like off your hands. Now, the target reference for both of these earphones was the Westone 4R, and that was confirmed to me by the owner of Lend Me Your Ears. The thing is that the actual way that they match up with the Westone 4R is actually quite astounding. They sound very, very, very similar. I actually think that in some respects they actually sound better than the Westone 4R, particularly in the way they handle vocals and string instruments, because they have a little bit less of that kind of transient smearing, or this kind of the timbre of the sound of the Westone 4R sometimes feels a little off to me. It doesn't feel quite natural, especially on pianos and string instruments. I think the VSonics actually do better in this regard. But in other respects, in terms of kind of micro detail, in terms of layering, I do think that the Westone 4R still has an edge. If I had to put a number on it, and it's kind of a silly thing to put numbers on subjective sound quality, but if I had to put a number on it, I would say these are like 80% there on the way of sounding like the Westone 4R. So for a $60 earphone, that is really quite an achievement. So as you might know, I have a list of my 5 favorite earphones over at my blog, LachlanLikesAthing.com. And I've been internally debating for a while whether or not I should bump the SE215 off the list completely from its number 2 position of my most kind of recommended favorites and replace it wholesale with the VSonic VSD3 and the 3S. And it's been a bit of an internal debate because while I think the VSD3 and the 3S sound like better versions of the SE215, in terms of ergonomics and in terms of kind of design, the SE215 fits a lot of boxes. It ticks a lot of boxes. So it's comfortable for most people, it's durable for most people, it's affordable for most people. So that's why I had it as number 2 on my most recommended list. This earphone, I think, is, while it's very, very close to dethroning the SE215, I still think it's a little more esoteric. So the ear guides are just a little more fiddly. The cable just seems a little less in terms of quality. And the earpieces are just a little bit larger, so I suspect they won't fit as comfortably in the average person's ear. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a bit of a tie, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand the list past 5 entries, and I'm going to pop this in at number 2 or number 3. I'm not sure at this point. I'll probably make up my mind once I've posted this review up. The SE215 is the earphone that I would most easily recommend to the average person on the street, apart from the VSonic GR07, but the VSD3 comes very, very close, and this is definitely an earphone that gives you pause, because for $60, this is a really, really competitive entry from VSonic, and I think they should be praised for that. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I'm looking forward to your comments. You can talk to me on Facebook at facebook.com/LachlanLikesAthing, on Twitter at LachLikesAthing. Please click the like button if you found this review helpful. And thanks to all my regular subscribers, and happy listening.